Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Toon Under podcast. We are here to talk about Newcastle 4, Chelsea 1. A very, very nice result. I'm Jack in Brisbane, and I am here with Keegan in Geelong. Keegan, my first question to you is, what were you more entertained by? Robbie Williams in the rain or Bruno and Anthony Gordon putting Chelsea to the sword in a 4-1 victory?
I think I probably walked out of Robbie Williams at about a 8.5, and then got a couple of hours in, and then by about 4 a.m. I was a solid 10. So it's been a long and winding Sunday. So it's about 20 past 9 at the moment. So sleep's not the best for me at the moment, but I'm happy to be on here and talking about the game with you tonight.
So what you're saying is Robbie was sort of the starter, and then Anthony
Yeah,
and Alex and
yeah,
Lewis, they were the main course.
yeah. Which I don't think I've ever said Robbie's the garlic bread. He's always the main course. But yeah, unfortunately, last night he was the garlic bread, and I know I love garlic bread, so I'm happy for the entree and the main course.
What's Robbie doing in a little town like Geelong anyway? That's what I want to know.
Well, this is the second time he's been here, Jack. So he must have loved it that much the first time. He thought, I have to go back there, and why wouldn't you come to God's country to perform your greatest hits again? What's better than Robbie in the rain? Because it was absolutely pissing down.
Yeah,
I think if you get on Robbie's socials, you can kind of get a bit of an idea of some of the rain that was pissing. It hasn't rained here for about 3 weeks, and the last 2 days it's absolutely pissed down. So,
yeah.
but
So
we didn't have a problem in the world.
it did look like it had a nice time. On Katie, my wife Katie, follows him on Facebook. She's very jealous about the fact you were there.
Yeah.
But I said to her, it's Robbie's all right, but 4-1 against Chelsea is probably
He's no Bruno.
He's no Bruno. Put it that way. We're going to talk about Bruno a bit later, obviously, because what a performance. But what do you think then? That 4-1 in all of the circumstances, all of the context that went into that game. What's your sort of reaction to that win? Because it's the start of a massive week, and we couldn't really have had much of a better start to the week, could we?
No, I don't know how many times we can say this, but that was like one of the best wins we've had under Eddie Howe. It feels like we've said this about 15 times, and I don't know if it's starting to lose its sort of the value of it, but given the circumstances, and I think from the last game, I think Isak was the only player we actually got back into the starting 11, because I think Miggy actually started the Bournemouth game. He just didn't last very long with that hamstring injury. And then to see that we'd lost Willock and Longstaff as well, I'm like, oh my God. And then, things are bad when you look at the bench. We'll probably get to this later, but you've got 3 goalkeepers and 4 under 21s with Paul Dummett and Matt Ritchie. So expectations were low, and I know we should never think that with a home game against anyone, but given the team, and no disrespect to Lewis Miley, I think he's going to be a very good player, but for a 17-year-old to start, because of the circumstances and things like that, expectations were low, but look, I should have known better. I think we all should have known better that at home we'll beat anyone.
You've been listening to Lee too much. Expectations indeed were low. You thought we were going to lose 3-0.
I didn't think we were going to lose. I thought we could. I thought we'd draw, because I think Chelsea's recent games have kind of been the Man City game was bizarre. I think it was like a FIFA game, but the Tottenham game was kind of a false 4-1, I thought. But ours was a lot more, I think, true and fair with the way we play, especially in the second half.
Yes, but Chelsea have had 2 games now, or 3 games now, including this one, where they've been very high scoring.
Yeah.
The Spurs game was just weird. Like it was never a 4-1, and they scored goals at the end. The Man City game was just kind of end-to-end sort of thing. But Chelsea had actually won 3 away games in the league before this game, and they'd only lost 1 away all season. That was the first game against West Ham. So there was a bit of a narrative coming into this that Chelsea were on the up, they were on the turn. You know, like as if everyone's plucky little Chelsea.
Yeah.
They've only 1 billion.
With
They're on the
250 million on the bench. The Battlers.
233 million came off the bench for them.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about our bench in a minute. But yeah, plucky little Chelsea just couldn't handle St James's Park today.
Not for
Let's
the
have
first time either.
start on lineup then. So we had Target at left back, we had Botman and Byrne at the back, and then we had Manquillo at right back. We had Anderson, Willock, and Longstaff in the middle. Murphy, Barnes, and Wilson. Oh, hang on a minute. Sorry, no, we didn't. This is the Newcastle United knackers guard.
Jack.
This is an 11, or without the goalkeeper. This is a team that
We probably would need one.
actually got out injured at the moment. So this doesn't even include Sandro Tonali or Lewis Hall, who were ineligible for this. And I don't want to keep banging on about the amount of injuries, and I was determined not to talk too much about that today. But basically, we have got an entire. I just want to. This just reinforces the point and sort of hammers home what a good result this is, because look at those injuries, unavailable players. How good is it that we've actually managed to pull this off without basically what would be a pretty strong team there, isn't it, Keegan?
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Jack. Assuming that Martin Dubravka's in goals for this team, who would win out of this team and the team that played Chelsea yesterday, do you think?
It's tough, isn't it? I think when we get onto the real team, even though the bench was very weak, I think we'll see when we look at the first team, we've actually probably got 6 or 7 first team players who would actually be starting anyway. So let's do it now. Let's just have a look at the real. Let's just have a look at the real team.
It was a gag. It was one of Jack's gags.
There's a little bit of a gag. Right. So we had Pope in goal. We had Trippier, Lascelles, Cher, and Livramento was playing left back. We had Bruno and Joe Linton back from their international exertions in that crazy game in Brazil against Argentina. Lewis Miley played again, second league game in a row for him. And then we had Miggy, Gordon, and Isak. A very, very welcome return to the starting lineup for Alexander Isak. Substitutes, we've already touched on this. I don't think I've ever seen any team have 3 goalkeepers on the bench before. Then we had Dummett and Ritchie, the elder statesman. And then you've got 4 literal children. You've got Diallo, Alex Murphy, Michael Undiweni, and Ben Parkinson. The surprise from this, I guess, was that Willock wasn't there. It's difficult from Eddie's press conferences to ever actually believe anything he says or take too much from it, because he just never gives anything away. But it was a bit of a surprise that Willock had suffered a reoccurrence of his Achilles injury, apparently. But a big relief, Keegan, to see Isak back. And like I said before, that first team is actually very, very strong, isn't it? Despite all of the injuries.
It is, yeah. I think Lewis Miley is probably the obvious, I don't want to say weak link, but least experienced player and things like that at this stage of his career. But apart from that, I mean, it's a pretty good 11, especially with Isak back, Gordon back out to his natural wing position, Almiron, I think Murphy, Barnes, if all fit, would probably rotate through them wings throughout games, and different guys will be starting different games and all that. And that was the idea behind the whole signings for the summer, to give really strong depth, what we thought we were going to need during the year. And it's probably gone way too far past what we thought we were going to need in terms of depth and stuff like that. I think one of the biggest questions, especially with the substitutes, I think, is, does Matt Ritchie get a babysitter fee for looking after the 4 kids while they're on the bench as well? I think maybe we could get our friend Andy to ask Eddie that before, whether it's the PSG press conference or the next league press conference on Friday or whatever it is. That'd be a really important question to ask. But I think Bruno and Joel Linton were always going to play, but you're always concerned with that long haul flight from the other side of the world to come back on a short turnaround and back up again, especially with the lack of depth that we have. So they're kind of forced to play, but that is always a concern. Almiron obviously didn't travel, but yeah, Isak back was massive. I think he's our best forward, regardless of Wilson's goal scoring record and things like that. I don't think I've seen a player like him with the composure inside the 18-yard box that he has, at least for Newcastle. Anyway, I know Thierry Henry, I think the comparisons we've said ad nauseum, but the composure that he has with the ball at his feet inside the 6-yard box is something I don't think I've ever seen in my time as a Newcastle fan.
Yeah, it's very, very good to have him back. But like I was saying, like you look at that team and there's maybe only Lascelles, Livramento, and probably Miley who would, the rest might be starting in the first team anyway. So for all of the injuries we do have and suspensions, the first team is still very, very strong. Like it's just behind that, like you said, I was joking in the week that Jacob Murphy's baby was probably going to get on the bench. And there is a Murphy on there, so
It might have been him.
It might have been him, yeah.
What about, we'll quickly touch on Livramento. His form's been absolutely outstanding since he'd started playing, whether it was in the League Cup when Trippier started off, or since Burns been injured and him and Trippier have kind of swapped between right back and left back. I know Dan Burns been great and he's had his critics and stuff like that, but I don't think he's an automatic walk back in now with the form that Livramento's had since he's come into the side.
He hasn't really just put a foot wrong. He's just been absolutely excellent every time he's played. And this probably wasn't his most outstanding game, but he still was winning the ball. He was still running forward. He's just a threat.
Yeah.
Like he's always a threat from fullback, and that's something we haven't necessarily had when Burns in there. So I think if left back was his natural position, I think there wouldn't be much debate. I think Burn would struggle to get back in. But it does sort of change the way we play as well, because we've done that thing where we've sat in at the back with three, and then Trippier's basically being an extra midfielder. But with Livramento, he can sit in, or he can move into the midfield, or he can bomb forward as well. So he just gives you that extra option. Burns going to be out for a while. We've also got Lewis Hall as well, of course, who can play in there. So I think that the one thing we can say is that the right back position is sorted for the next 10 years, potentially.
Yeah.
We'll see how long Trippier's got left, but what an option that is behind him, Livramento.
Yeah. He's been great. I know there was some knocks on him not so much when we brought him, but probably about a month ago when they weren't playing, and I can't remember what game it was, and people were saying, "Oh, why wouldn't you bring them on to try and change it up?"
Wolves,
Wolves, yeah. And there were a few people questioning why we even bought them for if we weren't going to play them, but Livramento especially has been outstanding the games he's played, and I feel sorry for Lewis Hall a little bit. I know Livramento's maybe a couple of years older than him, but rightly or wrongly, they both get compared to each other because they're young players who both come in at the same time, and Livramento seems a lot further advanced than what Hall is in his career. So I do feel sorry for him because people there is a couple of years difference in their age. So let's judge Hall in 2 years' time when he's Livramento's age.
And Livramento's had a whole season at Southampton in the Premier League as well, which is really invaluable experience. So
and played really well.
Yeah, he was brilliant. Like the fullback positions are sorted, and that 36 million or whatever it is not going to look like a bad signing. In a year or two, it doesn't even look like a bad signing now. Like it's one for the future. But when players for the future can play now like that as well, and it was against his former club as well, which was nice for him. He was up against Reece James, who was kind of one of the reasons why he had to leave Chelsea.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. Which of these players, because all of the injuries we've had and we keep getting, which of these players do you think would be the biggest miss if they went down injured? Because we've got a lot of games. We've got about 50 games in the next 3 weeks, so there probably is a likelihood that some of these players are going to get fatigued. Which do you think it is that would be the biggest miss if they went down?
It's probably the most obvious guy. It's a guy we've never won when he hasn't played. So Bruno, if you took Bruno out, it'd be either probably Shah or Gordon for me. Bruno's the obvious one, so maybe we'll exclude him because the numbers don't lie. But or even Isak, but depending on Wilson's availability. But I just think Gordon's this year's probably been our player of the season so far, so he'd be a massive miss.
Yeah,
we're lucky that he hasn't suffered an injury yet.
We're going to talk about all of these players individually later because they just deserve to be talked about on their own. But yeah, the bench was very diverse, let's say. And like I said, Chelsea brought on £233 million worth of players. We brought on 12 million, of which 10 million was Matt Ritchie 7 or 8 years ago. So it just shows like to have this result like this against a team who were improving, and who've spent so much money is just so impressive. And I think it's just what we needed to kind of. Bournemouth is a few weeks ago now, but just to kind of get rid of that and to set us up for the week ahead and to get some more points on the board, to help us keep in touch with the sort of top 4, top 5. So the first half, I think we had kind of the better of the first half in terms of possession and territory, but by half time, each team had 6 shots on goal each. We took the lead. It was Isak's 7th league goal of the season, which brings him level with Wilson. I just want to we'll talk about Anthony Gordon later as well, but he played a role in this goal as well because he does that run where he sort of gets the ball and it's hard to tackle him because if you're going to go for him, you'll probably foul him. And he does that run, that horizontal run across the pitch where players don't know what he's going to do. He could flick it in, he could shoot, he could pop it off. He passed it off and it deflected into Lewis Miley. 17 years. He's not 18 until May. And you couldn't see that pass on the TV. It was like, he's going to shoot. It just looked like he was going to shoot like any 17-year-old playing the first league game at St. James's Park would probably do, get excited. But for a 17-year-old to have that vision, and it wasn't necessarily a hard pass. It was kind of a straight pass into Isak, but it was the weight on the pass, and it was the vision to even see that in the first place. What a pass! What an assist! And Isak tucked it away. I'm just gonna, before we talk about Miley, I'm just gonna flash this. So the youngest assist makers, he's Newcastle's youngest assister at 17 years and 208 days. He's 6th in the Premier League. There's some pretty special players on that list.
I was going to say that's
Wayne Rooney,
very good players.
Cesc Fabregas. You've got Phil Foden, Aaron Ramsey, Theo Walcott. Quite randomly, you've got Nigel Quagie, who I think he's got the record for the most relegations. But it's pretty high company to keep. Talk about the goal, Keegan, the pass, the finish from Ice Cold Alex. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I like you said, the pass was easy. It was a 7-meter straight pass. But the thing that made it was the touch was unbelievable because of that deflection. It was a quick reaction, soft feet, sort of killed the ball right where he needed it. And like you said, the guy playing home debut, boyhood club, all his family and friends are there at the top of the 18-yard blocks. The easiest thing to do would be to have a go and see what happens. You might get a deflection, it might go in, but the composure and the clearness of thought to actually just play that ball into Isak was phenomenal. And even like the behind the goal shot is probably the best angle of it because you can see it just parted, and I don't know, Cucurella just froze. I think he ended up watching the game, and that split seconds, that's all a good player needs for half a yard of space in the box and makes them pay. But it's just the composure. I think Eddie spoke about it after the game as well. It's crazy that a 17-year-old kid who's on his second start ever in the Premier League can have the composure to do that and stuff like that. And part of me thinks maybe he seems a really humble kid, like quiet and things like that. Part of me thinks he didn't want to shoot, if that makes sense. Like he'd rather give it to the more experienced player and I'll just give it to him because he's a lot better than what I am and stuff like that. But it's so much more. And I think you could even tell with Isak's reaction. He was like, he just ran to him and grabbed him. I'm like, I know he's young and he's done all the preseason with the first team, and but he's still a 17-year-old kid. Like, and to have a 63 million pound player, like, basically grab you in a headlock and point to you and tell you how good you are. Like I know he's your teammate and you shouldn't feel like that, but it'd be impossible not to feel like that. Like, oh my God, like Alexander Isak's giving me the big ones in front of everyone at St. James's Park.
Yeah, he's living the dream, isn't he? And it wasn't just that; like, it was his whole performance was pretty assured. That's twice he's came up against Enzo Fernandez now, 100 million, and Miley's been the better player both times. To be honest, like, you don't want to get too carried away with players, but I think Eddie has just made a couple of comments about him, and he said that what sets him apart from his peers at his age is just his composure, his football brain. He just looks like an absolutely top class player already. So if we can, I'm sure he will be managed in the right way. But it's not often you see young midfielders, like sometimes it's wingers maybe that come in who are young and who are fast, but he just seems to have the composure. He's got the physical stature as well, even though he still has to fill out a
That's
bit.
the biggest thing for me because, like you said, with the wingers, the wing's more of a speed position rather than a physical position where you can kind of skin a guy and get around him and you sort of lose that physical aspect. But when you're in the middle of the park, like you're in the kitchen, there's stuff going on everywhere. You're always getting bumped and knocked. And I think if you can show you've got that physical, like not size about you, but that physical sort of attributes, you'll be fine. And coupled that with your composure, he'll be fine to play for the rest. Like I really hope he doesn't, but he'll be fine to play for the rest of the year. But there were calls at the start of the year. Let's send him out on loan and to a sort of top upper tier championship club and give him that sort of Elliot Anderson 6 months or whatever, or 12 months, and really maybe fast track his development. But I'm really glad he stayed now because he's going to get games here because of what's happened. And he's probably him and Anderson could be the biggest beneficiaries of the Tonali suspension because once Anderson comes back, I think there'll be a spot for him there most weeks with Miley as well.
Yeah, it sounds a bit funny, but he's probably too young to kind of go out on loan. Like, what's the benefit of sending a kid to like a
17-year-old
environment when he's got everything he needs around him and he is going to get game time as well? I think the biggest compliment you can pay him from this game is that he was in the Longstaff position and he basically just did what Longstaff would do. Like, he ran all day, he won the ball, he did what he had to do, and he got that beautiful assist. Like, for a 17-year-old, it's very, very special to see that from the academy. And our academy has not been great in recent years. So if you can get someone like this, who knows what he could be or how far he could go. And I think keeping his feet on the ground will be a big part of it. And we've got the right manager for that and the right set of players. So I'm no doubt that's going to happen. He was fantastic all game. But Chelsea came back into it, and then it wasn't long after we scored that they got the equaliser. I don't know if you've seen the foul. It was Lascelles made a mistake actually first, and he did this.
He gave the ball away. Yeah,
he did it a couple of times in the game where he gave the ball away.
But when he gave it away, he was a bit higher than what he normally is, which kind of left this big hole behind him.
Yeah, we were on the attack, and it wasn't even necessarily a dangerous position. It was just that there was a lot of space behind him because we were on the attack. Sterling came forward, and then Trippier. I think with these ones, you're always going to give a free kick away. Like, I think he did foul him probably. I think he touched him. I don't know what you think about that. Yellow, maybe a bit harsh because there was covering defenders. But either way, Sterling is not really renowned for stepping up and popping free kicks into the top corner. So, what were your kind of thoughts at that stage then when that goal went in? And did you think it was a foul leading to their goal as well?
I'm going to put a tinfoil hat on. I didn't think it was a foul, but Anthony Gordon does the same thing about 10 times a game. So you can't sort of not turn a blind eye to Anthony Gordon when he does it and then say that Trippier's wasn't. And if it's a foul, it's got to be a yellow card. Like, technically, he's impeded his run. I think it was Shah was a covering defender, so clearly not a red card because he wasn't through on goal. But yeah, I don't think anyone really was upset that Raheem Sterling was standing over the free kick. But fair play to him. He proved everyone wrong. It was a cracker.
Yeah, it was a beautiful free kick straight into the top corner. I don't know if he scored free kicks before, but that was it was really good. And kind of Chelsea had come back into it. It was a really, really good game. Like if you were watching that as a neutral, and the commentators were saying they were really impressed by the quality from both teams, really. Straight after their goal, Joe Linton missed, and he's done this. He's done this twice now in 3 games because he missed a header against Dortmund. But this was even worse. It was just so easy to just score corner at the back post, and he somehow missed it. Like he needs to work on his heading. Like he does everything else really well, but when he gets in goal, he sees that goal with his head. He just can't seem to compose himself. And there was against Manchester United last season as well, where he missed a couple.
Yeah, he just Joelinton with the ball at his head inside the 18-yard box is a recipe for disaster. It's just he'd have a great little YouTube highlights package of all his, I wouldn't say highlights, but incidents with the ball on his head. But I think it looked like he tried to work it into the corner once the ball, and it was a great ball. And how he got there, I can't remember. Someone blocked his defender and just left him wide open. And I think he'd kind of tried to just sort of nestle it in the corner there. But the keeper had fallen over. He just had to head it straight through. Like he didn't have to try and angle it away. All he had to do was just hit it straight back where it come from, and it would have been in. So I'd like to think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he didn't actually see the keeper fall over, so he could have hit it anywhere. But there's no excuse. Like that's unforgivable. And in the state of the game, that could have been a really, really costly miss, and we're very fortunate that it wasn't.
Yeah, it could really have been costly. I think it might have been given a foul as well, though. I was watching the highlights on Nufc on YouTube with Matthew Raisback, and it was actually apparently a foul, but I think VAR would have said that it wasn't a foul because the keeper just fell over. You can't just give a foul because the keeper falls over.
But I think he just lost his footing, it looked like.
Yeah. The referees quite often will just give fouls if the keeper
fell over. Something's happened to him.
But
like
he's not convincing that goalkeeper anyway. Like he wasn't convincing throughout the game. But Chelsea had a couple of chances as well. So Gallagher, Pope with his feet is not something I like seeing at the moment. He sort of spooned a attempted pass, but just before that or just after that, he made a really good save though. So he kind of redeemed himself. And then from the corner, from the save, there was a free header that was straight at him. Trippier hit the bar for us as well. So it was actually a really good sort of, I think we had the better of the half in terms of possession and territory, but chances was probably pretty equal. It could have easily been 2-2 at halftime. And I've got to be honest, at that point, I was just thinking, let's just take a point out of this and get home without any more injuries. It's like, when you have this amount of injuries, you can't stop thinking. It's like that's what is in the forefront of your mind all the time. You're not thinking, well, I'm not as a fan thinking about the game as much. I'm just thinking about, I hope we don't get any more injuries. And Joelinton and Gordon did both go down as well.
Yeah.
In what looked like quite innocuous incidents in the first half.
Hard in your mouth. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, not another one. But thankfully they were both okay. And Lascelles looked like he was sort of hobbling around for most of the game. But I think Eddie Howe said there was something wrong with his boot. I don't subscribe to the fact that I think that's a load of shit, but hopefully he'll be right because he's actually been pretty good, and we'll probably get to him very shortly.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, it was, but when Gordon went down, especially, it was just horrible, sinking feeling. And Longstaff did this in the Bournemouth game as well, where he's obviously out of this game because of that knock he got in the Bournemouth game. But you just feel like you can't catch a break, like we've got basically no senior players on the bench even. So it's, and the more it happens like that, the more you think we're going to get some fatigue injuries with all these games we've got coming up as well. So any win we can get at the minute is really important.
Yeah. Every point's worth gold at the moment.
The second half started a bit dodgy. Lascelles made another mistake and Chelsea had a free kick, which for some reason Sterling didn't take this time, even though it was almost the exact same position.
The commentators were all over it too. I go, who was the Scottish bloke on our feed?
I don't actually know. I don't know who it was.
He was like, I can't believe Yeah, I can't believe that he's let him take it after he scored the last one. There's no way you should be letting him take the next one.
So Reece James kind of spooned it over the bar anyway. So, and after that, we sort of were on top again, and then all of a sudden it was 3-1.
When it
So,
rains, it pours.
so the first of those goals, then our free kicks had not been amazing all day. The set pieces weren't great. So this time we had a free kick on the right, and we just played it across with kind of minimal sort of challenging, really. Like it went from Trippier to Bruno to Joelinton,
Yeah. No
out to
danger there at
Gordon,
all.
who
Yeah.
just whipped in an absolute peach, absolutely fantastic cross onto the head of Jamal Lascelles, who
It
just
was
tucked it
completely
away.
unmarked.
He was completely unmarked. He was still forward from the free kick. I do have to give Dimmy some credit here
Yeah,
because he did
absolutely.
say in the last podcast that Jamal Lascelles was going to score a second half header, which he did. But the cross from Gordon, like when you see the technique that he's got, and we'll talk about him more when we talk about his goal. I've said this a few times, and it just sounds silly, but his technique reminds me a bit of Cristiano Ronaldo. The way he crosses the ball, the way he touches the ball, he's got so much quality, and he's adding output and end product onto his game now, which is the one thing that Everton fans said you're never going to get end product from him. Well, we are getting end product from him, and he's probably worth double what we paid for him. And what a moment for Jamal Lascelles to just power that header into the corner. So at this point, Keegs, you're thinking, this is it now. We're looking good.
Yeah, I was thinking, shit, there's a long way to go. It was the first thing I was thinking. But yeah, Lascelles is he's probably our best defender at set pieces, I think. He's our biggest threat out of our centre backs, even though Burns 8'10" and stuff like that. I think Lascelles is probably our best header of the ball in terms of set pieces and stuff. So I'm glad. And we've been banging on him for a while now, probably ever since Botman has been injured. But there's a fair argument that people would make that Sven Botman's probably our best centre back after being here for 18 months. But I think the biggest compliment you could pay Lascelles is we haven't missed Botman, which is massive. So credit to him, and we shouldn't be surprised. Like Eddie, this is what Eddie does. He's done it to every other fringe or average player that we've had in the squad. So we shouldn't be surprised that he's done it with Jamal Lascelles as well. But I think it's about time he actually got some kind of reward for the way he's been playing and stuff like that. And Gordon's unreal. Like he's quick, he's fit, and if any Newcastle fan wants a laugh or a smile, jump on social media and scroll back to when we signed Anthony Gordon and just read some of the comments from the Everton fans. It completely oblivious that it was them that was making him a bad player. Like the way the club, whether he was coached and everything like that. I mean, he's come up through their academy. They're bloody door stopping him in the streets after games and trying to railroad him out and everything like that. And there's not many people that had a good or a bad word to say when he left, especially with the price we paid for him. They thought they'd like the cat that got the cream. They were, but 12 months later, it's phenomenal that not even 12 months later, like you said, if he's a 40 million, if the fee's correct, it was 40 million. He's worth 60 and then some, like comfortably.
It was quite nice in this game to see Cole Palmer, who got called up for England, because that's what happens when somebody has a couple of good games for a traditional big club. They get called up for England. Anthony Gordon's been tearing it up all season. It's probably to our advantage that he didn't get called up, because it meant that he'd had 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
But if he's not in that England squad soon, like I don't know what more you can do. Like you talk about the job that Eddie has done with Lascelles and Joelinton. He's turned Jacob Murphy into a Champions League winger. So what can he do with Anthony Gordon, who's got a lot more potential and ability than Jacob Murphy?
Yeah.
Younger. He could be a true elite forward, and he's on the way to being that. Like there hasn't been any signs of his kind of petulance. Like we'll talk about his goal a bit later as well, but he's now got 5 goals and 3 assists. He's won 2 penalties as well. in the league. So he's just so good. Like you see him on the team sheet and you just feel excited. Defenders must hate playing against him. He's absolutely amazing to watch. He's brilliant. And then before Chelsea could even set themselves, before the camera had even gone back to the game action.
They missed the kickoff and nearly missed the second one as well.
That's it. So England's Cole Palmer just passed it back to Thiago Silva, who looks every bit as 38, 39 years, what he is now.
His
He
legs
made some
completely
kind of
forgot working for the
strange-
second time in the game.
I think it was a tackle from Livramento that led to this.
He
goal.
got his
So
foot in that started.
He got his
yeah.
foot in and he won the ball. Chelsea passed it back, and then you've got to be honest. Like being chased down like that by Joe Linton's got to be scary, even for someone like Thiago Silva.
Yeah.
He scared him into a mistake, and he missed his header, Joe Linton, but he was not going to miss this. He absolutely twatted it as hard as he could.
Yeah.
He took quite a heavy touch first, but it set him up perfectly. The goalkeeper was like diving out the way of the ball. I think he was scared of it. And Joe Linton just hammered it into the bottom of the goal. It was a great goal.
The length of his stride, he was just a man on a mission. Like, yeah, he was. I don't think I've seen someone run at goal so aggressively than what he did, and then he just hit it with a stack of violence. Like I said, I think the keeper kind of jumped out of the way as if to say, "Just go that side. I don't want anything to do with this." And then, yeah, like you can tell, the celebrations, I think, was more of a, "I'm sorry. I hope this is making up for what I missed earlier," and stuff like that. And his first goal for the season as well, which was surprising. I thought he might have scored already, but yeah, I think that definitely set the cat amongst the pigeons, and I think everyone was sort of breathing a bit of a sigh of relief with that 2-goal cushion.
Yeah, and it's what we do. Like we did this against Villa as well, where we get a goal, we smell blood, and we just go for it, And teams struggle with that kind of intensity at St James's Park, especially. So as soon as it went to 3-1, like you still feel like a bit worried because it's Newcastle and nothing's ever
no depth and
there's no depth. There's nothing on the bench. Nobody feels comfortable. Chelsea've still got a lot of good players to bring off the bench.
Can I just say something before we move on about this goal?
Yeah.
So you've said it, and everyone said it. The mistake, like it was a howler from Thiago Silva, right? But how many times are people going to say, "Oh, it was a mistake"?
Yeah.
The opposition have made a mistake. Yeah. Do you know what? If he doesn't have a 6'5" Brazilian bulldozer running at him, he doesn't make the mistake. Like we are forcing teams into mistakes. They're only making them because we're putting pressure on them. And I think it looked like he was going to play that ball square, and Isak was there, so he couldn't play that. And then he just panicked. But he doesn't panic unless we're actually putting the pressure on. And I'm sick of every team that does this at St James's Park is always they get that, they've made a mistake. They've made a mistake. No, we've made them make the mistake. Like, let's start acknowledging the fact that we're the instigators of this, not them.
Yeah, and that's what happens as well when you win the ball, like Tino did in their half. Like they hadn't set themselves; they were still reeling from the Lascelles' goal, and then Tino had the ability and the presence of mind to just get in and win the ball in their half. And it's a bit like what Shah did against PSG for his fourth goal. For some reason, he was still up there in the midfield, winning the ball at that point of the game when the game is already won at that stage. So it just shows like it's what they're trained for, the team, and it's the identity of the team is to be intense.
This is what we do.
Fight, to get the high turnovers and then have the ability to actually put a finish to it as well, finish it. And it was 3-1, and it was pretty much game over at that point. Especially when Reece James went and got sent off. His first one was, I know there's this new rule about you can't kick the ball away. I think Sterling later on did it, and it was a clear kick away because he was frustrated and the whistle had gone ages ago. With Reece James's first one, it was a foul by Gallagher, and then James did sort of kick it away a bit. But I don't really. I think it was a bit soft, like the first yellow card. Like,
So is it? I know the rule, but is the rule you can't kick the ball away, or is it? It's a time wasting thing. So when Sterling done it, he wasn't really time wasting because
they were
why
losing.
do they need to
Oh,
waste
no, it was
time? Like
one.
they're
Yeah, yeah.
losing. You know what I mean? Like whereas the game was still tied when James done the first one. So like, yeah, well, you are time wasting because you're trying to waste. And I reckon the lino dobbed him in too. I don't think the ref's seen it. And I reckon the linesman on his headset had said, "Yellow card, James. He's kicked the ball away."
Yeah, because
Because
it
even the
was.
commentators thought it was on Gallagher at the start,
Yeah,
and then they kind of went, "Oh no, no, no! The yellow card's actually for Reece James for time wasting." So
yeah. No, it wasn't really like a kick away like Sterling's was,
he
but this
kicked it
was
like
more just
10 or
like
15 meters. Like it wasn't
yeah, and
even
it was
far.
more like I don't know. I'm not complaining about it, but I think it's just if you're going to book people for that, then you're going to get into a situation where players are then like more likely to get sent off because it was a pass out from Sanchez and James sort of don't think he
It's a
realized
horrible first
who was on
touch.
him. Horrible first touch. Gave it to
The same
Gordon, and
thing.
then when you do
You know,
that, when Gordon's away like that, all it takes is a hand on him, and it's a yellow card because he's away on
which is the
goal.
same as what Trippier did at the start. So you can't sort of say
Yeah,
Trippier didn't deserve a yellow card, but it's the same thing. Yeah, it was a mistake by Reece James, but if Gordon's not up in his face putting pressure on him, he doesn't get yellow carded. Like we're
yeah.
forcing these mistakes again. But it was an absolute honking first touch that it killed him. There was
Gordon's
he's rubbed out again.
Gordon's terrorized him basically. Like he's scared him, and
He
he's
won't be
got
the
the ball.
first and he won't be
He's
the
being
last,
pulled
Reece
back
James.
exactly. But Reece James is an international quality fullback, Chelsea's captain. But
And
once it went
Anthony
down
Gordon's
to
not.
exactly once it went down to 3-1 and 10 men, it really was game over. And then Gordon put the icing on the cake. A beautiful little pass from Miggy. Gordon had gone up front by this point because I think Richie had come on for Isak. And the movement, this is why Gordon is dangerous when he plays up front. He just sort of darted in front of the defender
Just
and
done that
Miggy
little
popped
wrap
it in his
around.
face. Not a hint of offside. And he was away. And not just to get away like that. And the movement was brilliant. But then to have the touch inside and just to finish it in the bottom corner. That's just the sign of someone who's full of confidence. That's the kind of goal that elite wingers, wide players forwards score pretty
Yeah.
regularly. What about his overall performance, Keegan? We've talked about him quite a bit. He's probably been our player of the season so far. He's certainly up there. But the goal is beautiful. But his overall performance and his impact on this team at the moment is just so strong, isn't it?
Yeah, he personifies everything that we're about. And you can see now that he's had the preseason, his confidence is probably up from the Euros in the summer as well. He's every part of a Newcastle player that they thought he was going to be when they brought him. They would have watched him at length and they've said, look, this bloke's got everything that we need. And that's why they paid the money they did, which I think they were happy with at the time because they knew what they were buying. Like they're no secrets. These guys know what they're doing. They know who they want to buy and they know how they're going to fit into how they play. So they're not just like nearly every other Big Six club where they'll just spend money on a player because he's a good player. Not sure where he quite fits in how they play, but we do things differently and we know what we want. And I think our squad is fantastic. And we don't have 20 good players, with 20
Mm.
great players like Chelsea do, because it will upset. Like guys will get upset and start disrupting the dressing room because they're not playing and things like that. We've got the perfect blend of guys who are happy to play their role, like your Jacob Murphys and things like that. And I think Anthony Gordon was in the same boat as well. But the way he's played this season has been phenomenal. And I don't get me wrong, I'm that happy that he didn't get picked for the England
Mm.
team for this recent international break. But at the same time, I'm absolutely perplexed that he didn't. Like
Yeah.
he's been our player of the season. He's just come off, like I said, player of the tournament in the under 23 Euros, and his form's actually gotten better since then. And to pick someone like Cole Palmer before him is, I just don't get it. So that's not for me. I don't care. I'm part of me wants him to play because he deserves it, but the other part says no, I don't, because I don't want him to get injured and shit like that. But he's phenomenal. He's amazing.
He's 22. Like, how good is he going to be when he's 24, 26? Like, that's the thing. Like, what's his ceiling? Like, he's just he's so good, and he just oozes class and quality, and he's got the temperament as well, which was another thing that we were told he doesn't have. He's immature. You know, he can't handle it. He's going to get sent off. He's just like, he's next level. He's just so good. We saw the game out. We brought a couple of children on, which was nice. Give the kids a little run out. Michael,
Did you notice that Richie come on as well? So Richie could look after him on the ground,
babysitting them. Yeah, the babysitter came on, so that it was all good. It's funny to be in this position though, where in such a big game against a good team, where you can bring these basically kids on. And it was a bit like Man U, where Eddie said, "Oh, we just used the second half as like a training exercise."
Yeah,
he didn't say it like that.
After we started 6 fullbacks at the same time.
Yeah. So what a moment for the young lads, bringing them on. And you know, we'll see. We weren't hoping to see them at this stage of the season, but there they are. Like, we're hoping we're not going to have to rely on them. But it's amazing experience for them to get the debuts in such a environment as well, where we've already won the game. We saw it out. Let's talk about man of the match. There's one person we haven't really spoken about too much yet. Well, there's a couple actually. I'm going to mention Miggy, who had a great game after his injury. I'm going to mention Fabian Schär, who is probably the most underrated centre back in the Premier League. But you can do the honours. You've got the T-shirt on. What is it about Bruno that makes him so important to this team? And why is it that he just makes the team tick in such a different way when he's playing, when he's not there?
Yeah, I think his greatest attribute is he knows when he has to step up a bit. So as soon as that hair goes platinum blonde, you know he's going to have a big game, and he knows it's time. It's kind of like if you're wrestling when Triple H used to pour the water over his head, like, you know, it was game time and it's time to go. So when he rocks up and he's platinum blonde with Joel Linton, then you know shit's getting serious. So, but I don't want to say we take him for granted, but I think we are starting to take him for granted because his performances are just like first class every week. So it's hard to say he had a great game because that's his level. Like, it's kind of hard for good players to get judged like that, and it's unfair, I think, in a way, because someone else could have a game up near his level and all they'll do is get talked about because of how good they played. But the reality is, with guys like Bruno, they're at that level every week. So I honestly thought he was probably our man of the match last night as well. He was unbelievable in the middle of the park with sort of helping Lewis Miley out as well. Like, yeah, that kind of stuff that shouldn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, he gets the team out of trouble quite a lot because he picks the ball up quite deep, and it's one of the new words that people say, but he's press resistant. Like, you just can't tackle him, or if you do, you foul him.
Because what he does, the crazy thing that he does, sorry to cut you off, Jack, is he knows where the trouble's coming from, and he can put his body between the opponent and the ball. So he's really, really hard to tackle because he never really leaves the ball open in a position where someone can get the ball off him. And if they do, it's probably going to be a foul because they're going to have to take his legs out to actually get to the ball. And that kind of stuff's massive, especially a lot of teams are pressing teams now. So if you've got someone who can be shield the ball and press resistant, like you just said, that's unbelievable. That's just another, like, his vision and his passing and everything's great. But that for me is nearly my favorite thing, when he gets the ball and he can sort of see where the press is coming from and just can manipulate his body between the pressure and the ball to protect the ball as well. It's just amazing.
He doesn't often get the assists or the goals, but he's often the one who has the assist for the assist. So he'll be involved in the move somewhere before it actually gets to the pass and then the goal. Because he's playing in that deeper position.
They call them score involvements in AFL.
Score involvements.
Like,
he's probably the one player. Like he's probably the one. Maybe Trippier, maybe as well, but world class. Like he plays for Brazil. He starts for Brazil. He wouldn't look out of place in Manchester City's team, PSG, anybody, Barcelona, anyone, because he's got that much quality and he's just got those attributes for the modern game. And it's a bit of a concern what we do when we don't have him. Like he's pretty fit all the time. There was that spell last season where he had his ankle injury and he wasn't really fit towards the end of the season. But we were still winning games, with him in there and he wasn't fully fit. But what do you think we can do when he's not there? Because there's such a big drop off, and it's nothing against the players who come in. It's just they're not Bruno, and it all is the way the team plays because he's so important to it. So they're going to have to maybe come up with a plan, aren't they, for when Bruno's not actually there, and we have to think about what we're going to do.
Yeah, the reality is he's not going to play every game for the rest of the season, whether it's injury or fatigue, rotation, niggle, suspended, whatever it is. The reality is he's not going to be like that. So I think that's part of the reason why Tonali got brought. but we're shit out of luck with that one. So you are right. We're going to have to figure out some kind of formula or alter the way we play a little bit because we can't replace him. He's an irreplaceable player for us. So that's why Eddie's Eddie and Mad Dog's Mad Dog, because they can think of something else to try and help us win games when he's not playing.
That 100 million release clause or whatever it is looking a bit cheap all of a sudden. I remember earlier in the season after the Brighton game, he wasn't playing. He didn't have a very good start to the season, and there was genuinely fans saying, "Oh, we've got Tonali now. Do we even need Bruno?" Like after 4 games, he's got the contract. There's apparently this release clause. He should be playing in the Champions League, for the next 5 years. If he wants to, if we don't get there, I don't want to talk about him leaving now, but 100 million, you'd probably not be happy even now, would you, sell him for that if that's what the release clause is? Because he's just so important to the team.
Yeah, I think people will say you can go and buy whoever you want for another 100 million, but the person might be Bruno. That's just how it is. And it's not just the player, it's the person, it's the way he's brought into the whole region and the off-field stuff as well. It's the whole package with him. It's not just the 90 minutes you get every time he plays. It's everything. So not just he looks like everyone loves him around the dressing room and things like that. So he really is 100 million is not enough for a player like that because you got to He's no trouble. He's a fantastic player, but he looks like he's a fantastic person as well. And I think every club would be they'd bite your hand off for a player like him.
Absolute pleasure to watch him every week. Absolute pleasure. So here's the league table. We've gone up to 6th because Man United haven't played yet. They've got Everton. I think if we can keep in touch, we've got a lot of games coming up, obviously, including the 2 Champions League games, and we've got a Carabao Cup game, and we've got a midweek Premier League game against Everton. I think if we can keep in touch with the top 4 or 5 by the time we'll play, after the Milan game, I think we've got Luton and Fulham at home, and we've got Forest, so things get a little bit easier. But what do you reckon if we can stay around that 5th, 6th mark? We're only 7 points off the top of the table as well, so it's quite tight at the top. But considering all of the context and all of the injuries and everything that we've talked about, the league table is looking pretty nice, isn't it? Still,
yeah. It's not so much for me. It's not so much looking at the games we're playing. It's more a time frame. So if we can still be around that time by the Christmas week, around the 6th, within striking distance of sort of 4th or 5th, by the time Christmas rolls around in a month, everything crossed, touch wood. Hopefully we'll have Barnes back. We'll have Wilson back. We might get a couple more bodies, Longstaff and Anderson back as well. Hopefully things look a little bit like our depth looks a little bit more fatter, especially through that Christmas period where it's going to be very similar to what it's been now. So if we can get ourselves in a position where we can hang around that sort of 5, 6, 7, and then start getting bodies back in, I think we could be really formidable at the back end on the way home, coupled with no doubt we're going to have to buy maybe 2 or 3 players again in January because of what's happening and Botman as well. We still don't know. I don't think anyone really knows what's the latest with him and the severity and the length of time that he might be out. So I think we have spoken about maybe it's Fabian Schär's position is the one to potentially upgrade next as well. So it'd be interesting to see whether we go for a defender. I'm not sure if they'll buy it off a midfielder, maybe a lone midfielder. I think Calvin Phillips has been mentioned as well. I don't think we'll touch any Ruben Neves or anything like that at this stage. But yeah, I think, it just, if we can get a couple of bodies back by January and then maybe add a couple through the transfer window as well, and we're still hanging around sort of 5th, 6th, 7th, I think, we could be in for an absolute blockbuster second half of the year.
Even if we got someone like, I'm not saying Chris Wood, but someone of that mould who can be the third choice striker on loan, like Man, you got Weghorst last season. Someone like that who can just be a focal point, who's reliable, who's going to be reliably fit if Isak and Wilson aren't. That'd make a big difference because then we wouldn't have to put Jolinton or Gordon up there.
Like an Anton Sibianski type of
type of
guy.
I think we will be reactive in January just because we have to be because of the injury situation. But I'm not sure we're going to be sort of bringing spending forward. I think it'll just be a case of seeing what the market's doing.
Do you think they'd have a nibble at Ekitike on loan?
I'm not the same as other fans who just think he's burned his bridges. Like I don't care really about what happened before. If he's a good young player, like they did the due diligence before on him. So I think if he's
I don't understand if he was good enough sort of 15, 16 months ago and he's chosen to play for his home club. Like, exactly. I don't know why you should just turn your back at him. I wouldn't have thought, like, if that was Lewis Miley, for example, that we wouldn't get that upset about it all. But I'd take him if he's up to it. But I think we could really be alone with an obligation to buy. Given the FFP stuff and things like that. So I think that could be a route we could go down in January. Maybe permanently buy one player and maybe 2 coming in on a 6-month loan with an obligation to buy, or a Calvin Phillips who might just be a 6-month loan because he needs to play before the Euros or something like that.
Yeah, we just don't want kids on the bench, really. Like,
No.
We're going to be going into the business end of the season, so we'll want people who are a bit experienced who can contribute. So really good game, really good result. Everyone was feeling really good and really positive after the game. And I don't want to make too much of this because, there's a bit of sort of back and forth and different opinions about it. But I just found this pretty strange from Murdad Gudusi. I'm going to flash up his tweet that he put. So he said, not long after the game, "What a team. NUFC, we need to give these guys more support in the stadium. We need to be louder. We need to be the 12th man." Jamie Rubin replied to that, saying, "What a team. And yes, we do need to match the intensity of the players with our support." Amanda wasn't happy about this. She put on Instagram, "What an amazing game. So proud of the whole team who worked so hard today. The atmosphere was amazing, and we are so lucky to know our 12th man is always our fans." So there's a bit of a domestic going on there, bit of a quiet train journey back to London for them.
Yeah, mid-eggs in the doghouse. All right.
I think, like I said, I don't want to make too much of this. Like I talked about this a bit on social media, and I had people accusing me of trying to cause division as if anyone gives a shit what I say or think.
Typical.
And then I had a few people saying that I don't really have an opinion because I live 10,000 miles away, which is a good one. But I think any owners, it's not just about this, and I'm not offended by what they said. I just think you have to be very, very careful when there can be any perception that you're criticizing supporters. And I think that was a criticism because he's saying we need more from the supporters. I think in this instance, it's especially strange because there's been a lot of talk about the ticketing policy that Murdad and the club actually set, which has meant that a lot of the old fans who used to go can't actually get in anymore. It really seems strange to do this after a 4-1 win as well, where by all accounts the
Yeah.
atmosphere was quite good. And I just think you've got to be really careful when you're criticizing supporters, and I think it was a bit of a criticism, and I just don't know why he did that. And I know that there's different opinions about this, and like I said, it's not a big deal, but it just seems very strange to me that he did this. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a dig. Like, there's no other way you could interpret it. And Ruben sort of coming in as well. They've definitely spoke about it during the game and how flat it was. But one, I don't think it was the right time after a 4-1 win. Like, it's normally something you'd sort of say after a loss, and kind of like a bit of a rallying call, I guess, after a loss, to try and gather the troops and let's push everyone on and let's get loud next game and stuff like that. And it's probably the most hotly debated topic at the club at the moment, is the ticketing and things like that. And I don't think, and look, we're saying this from 10,000 miles away, so what do we know? But I don't think there's a right answer for anything that they do. So whatever policy and whatever way they want to do it, it's going to be wrong. You're going to upset people, and people are going to have the shits either way. So they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. Now, I think they're trying to make the best of the shit sandwich that they've got, but the facts are, it's just a shit show. And it's hard for us to comment on how bad the atmosphere is because, yeah, we're 10,000 miles away. We watch it on TV, and it's hard to get a gauge, especially because you don't know how loud the actual effects mics are turned up around the ground, which we can sort of hear the background, but it's really hard to get a feel for it. So we're kind of guided by people who are in the stadium, and even they're divided on it. Some are saying it's not that bad. Some are saying it's good. Some are saying it's no good. And I've read so much different stuff about it. Like, if it's the core, that's what happens when you sell your soul and you get all the corporates in and stuff like that. As far as I know, there was a little bit of disruption in the Leasers where some people lost their seats for more extended corporate area, but most of the corporate areas have always been there. They've just done them up so they're a lot nicer, and the tickets are a little bit more expensive to get in there. But I've read, like, it's an age thing where there's the age demographic in the stadium is really high. So I don't know. Like, it's just random shit. And people, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. So it doesn't matter what anyone does. There's no right way to do everything. And the loyal points and people traveling to away games and not actually going because they need the points and everything. Like, it's just a shit show, but I don't know how you fix it.
Yeah,
But
and
abusing it, trying to have a little dig at the supporters, the one way that you don't try and fix it.
Yeah, that's why I just think, like, it's one thing. It's probably the one area that the club have really had criticism on since they came in. And like you said, they're never going to keep everyone happy. You've probably got 20, 30,000 people who want to get in who can't. So there has to be a policy of some sort. But it was just a strange thing to say, I think, after such a game as that as well, where it was such a good win. And like you said, him and Ruben have been sitting there, obviously thinking the crowd are not in this. Like, but you're not going to get games like PSG all the time as well. That was such a unique experience.
That's the outlier. Yeah.
So that's the outlier. Like, and War Flags do what they can do, but it's just the nature of supporting a football club. Like, and as you get better, you know, the expectations change. We've spoken with other people, you know, on the podcast about people can do what they want when they go to a game. Like, there's this thing about fan police talking about tourists and people videoing the game.
Yeah.
Who cares what people do? You know, like, it doesn't matter. Like, people pay their money. Like,
they pay their money, they can do what they want.
You react to what happens on the pitch as well. So I think football owners, and it's not just, you know, our owners now, it's every owner, has to be very, very mindful if they're going to say anything, even if it's not a criticism of the supporters, anything that can be perceived to be a criticism. Somebody called me a woke snowflake on Twitter for saying this.
Bloody
but I
Dimmy, he's
just
got no shame, does he?
and I'm not offended by it. Like, I'm not at the game. I don't get easily offended. I don't care what people say. I just think you have to be careful if you're in such a position where you know that every word you say has an impact and it is going to be
Yeah.
argued one way or another. They just need to be careful, I think, in what they're saying. And put it this way: if Mike Ashley had said that, you know,
Oh,
they'd be burning Sports Direct down on Northumberland
yeah.
Street.
They want to do it anyway.
And it kind of goes back to what I've said about the owners since the beginning. They're not Newcastle supporters. They're not our friends. They are people who own a football club for their own reasons.
They own a
So
business.
they own a business. So you have to bear that in mind at all times. They're gonna make unpopular decisions or do things that people don't like. So it's healthy, I think, to have that, to not just blindly defend everything they do or everything they say, because sometimes they don't get it right. And I think that was a bit of a misstep, like not a major one, not a big problem, but I do think it was a misstep that I have to just be a bit careful of. And I think the reaction from social media from people was quite similar to that. People were saying that it was a bit of a mistake. I think that they'd said that. But anyway, we've got another massive game coming up on Wednesday morning our time against PSG in the Champions League. We'll quickly talk about this. Here's the league table. You've got Dortmund top on 7 points, PSG second on 6 points, Milan third on 5 points, and we're sitting there fourth on 4 points. The group of death has proven to be a very competitive group. PSG away is a big ask when we've got a lot of injured players. I wouldn't completely rule us out and say we completely haven't got a hope in hell. But you've got to think a draw would be a really good result in this. Personally, I think that the other game is more important for us because I think if we can get into a situation where we need to beat Milan to finish third and get into the Europa League, I'd be very, very happy with that. So we need them to not beat Dortmund and us to not lose to PSG. You probably haven't thought much about PSG since we've just had such a big game, but what are you thinking ahead of this game, Keegan?
Honestly, don't get smashed and don't get any more injuries. I think I don't think anyone's really expecting us to go and win the game or probably get anything out of the game. I think they'll be a very mad team after what we've done to them at home, and retribution will be firmly front of mind. So if we can just get out of this with no injuries and maybe not as bad a loss as what we inflicted on them at home, I think that'd be a pretty good result for us because, like you said, if these games, and I know we want to win every game we play in, but there comes a point where it kind of goes into damage limitation now, and you have to prioritize what we do. And like you said, if we can hope that Dortmund can beat Milan, and we can put all our sort of eggs in the Milan basket and try and get into the Europa League, which doesn't resume till I think was it February or something next year.
Yeah.
So we can get hopefully a lot of our injured players back for a genuine tilt at the Europa League, plus hopefully some players in January as well. So yeah, I think just kind of write this game off. Hopefully we've got to beat Milan at home, which I think is a very doable thing with hopefully a couple more bodies back too. So I just want the same 11 players that played on the weekend to be available for next weekend as well.
Yeah, I think whatever happens, we've not disgraced ourselves in the Champions League. Dortmund we've been the second best team in both those games, although the first one were worth a point probably. So it would just be nice to go into the Milan game and not thinking it's just a dead rubber. We've got nothing to play for. So I think it'd be really nice if we can go into that needing a win, because I think we would win that, and then the Europa League might be our best shot at getting back in the Champions League as well. Although Liverpool are in that, so we don't do very well against Liverpool.
Yeah.
So maybe it'd be better not to go there and have to play them in the semi-final or something. That would be horrible. All right, I think we'll call it a day. You can go and listen to some Robbie and have yourself a nice sleep.
I will, mate. I'll be loving my life.
Yeah, enjoy day after tomorrow, right? thanks everybody. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what you've heard. We will be back after the PSG game on probably Wednesday night our time. So we will see you then. Cheers. Thanks, Keek.
See you, Jack.